Hi, I'm Stefan of stefangourmet.com. My passion is food and cooking. I'm also an avid user of Sous Vide and like to share my knowledge on my blog. My favorite cuisine is Italian, and I've even learned the language to be able to research recipes in their original form and communicate with Italian chefs. Today, I will share my way of preparing Ragù alla Bolognese with you using Sous Vide. Ragù alla Bolognese is a classic recipe, and it's somewhat ironic to use sous vide to prepare it, which is obviously not the classic method. With sous vide, we can obtain a velvety texture that would otherwise be hard to obtain. But otherwise, I follow the official recipe exactly. Ragù alla Bolognese has an official recipe that was registered with the Chamber of Commerce in Bologna in 1982 after a lot of debate. The ingredients are as follows: 300 grams of beef, 150 grams of pancetta, 300 grams of sieved tomatoes, passata di pomodoro. I use good quality Italian peeled tomatoes and puree them, as it is hard to find good passata di pomodoro around here. You can tell from the proportions that Ragù alla Bolognese is a meat sauce with tomato, not a tomato sauce with meat. 50 grams each of carrot, onion, and celery, the trinity that you will find in many Italian recipes. Half a glass of white wine and half a glass of milk. The milk is an important ingredient that rounds out the flavor of the tomato. Butter or olive oil. Bologna is the capital of the region of Emilia-Romagna. Emilia, to the west, has a lot of cattle and thus milk and butter, and is famous for the Parmigiano Reggiano cheese. Emilia uses butter for cooking. Romagna, to the east, has a lot of olive trees and uses olive oil for cooking. In Bologna, both are used. You could also use a mixture. And finally, salt and pepper. There are no mushrooms, no garlic, no herbs like parsley or basil in Ragù alla Bolognese. If you add those, you can still make a nice ragu, but it will not be recognized by someone from Bologna as being the famous ragu from their city. Sous vide is not suitable for browning and reducing, so those steps of the recipe are done on the stovetop. An important step in any recipe for Ragù alla Bolognese is browning the meat, as that builds flavor. You should brown the meat in batches, as otherwise the water that will be released from the meat will not evaporate quickly enough and the meat will be boiled instead of browned. Brown ground meat in olive oil or butter over high heat. If you brown all of the meat in batches, it will become dry or even gritty. Most people will just brown all the meat at once. What happens is that only part of the meat ends up browned, but all of the meat ends up overcooked before the tomatoes are added. The solution to this is to brown only a part of the meat and add the rest raw. If you then cook everything sous vide, the raw meat will end up perfectly cooked and give the ragu a velvety texture. It is a compromise. Browning more meat means more flavor, but leaving more meat raw means a more velvety texture. If you own a meat grinder, there is an easier way to brown only part of the meat, and that is to slice the meat in steaks and brown those. It is much easier to brown steaks than it is to brown ground meat. Season the steaks with salt before browning and brown them in plenty of olive oil or butter over high heat. After browning, you allow the steaks to cool down and then grind them. The steaks will still be raw on the inside. The carrot, onion, celery, and pancetta need to be finely chopped. Since I was making a huge batch of 16 times the official recipe, I used a food processor to finely chop the carrot, onion, and celery. The pancetta I did chop by hand. I actually make my own pancetta from scratch, and I cure it in my garage. Browning the meat leaves a lot of flavor in the pan, so the pan should not be cleaned before adding the aromatics and pancetta to the pan. Brown the aromatics over medium-high heat Stirring. When the aromatics are golden, deglaze with white wine and allow the wine to reduce over medium-high heat. When it is almost dry, add the tomatoes, as well as some salt. Stir and bring to a boil, then reduce to a simmer. If you use steaks and juices have leaked out of them while cooling off, add those juices to the sauce as well. Simmer the sauce over low heat until it has thickened and is quite dry. Stir it regularly while it simmers. How often you need to stir and how long it will take depends on your pan, how high you put the heat, as well as the amount of sauce. It is best to stir when the sauce is sticking a bit to the pan, but not quite burning. This way, you get some more browning and build more flavor. I use a timer so I don't forget to stir and allow it to burn, which is usually about every 30 minutes. But like I said, the time between stirring will depend on the pan and the heat. When the sauce has become quite thick, add the milk. Stir and keep simmering over low heat, same as before. When the sauce is thick and dry to your liking, turn off the heat. It should really be quite dry, as there will be no more evaporation after this, as we will be cooking in sealed plastic bags, and the meat will release some liquid. Taste and adjust the seasoning with salt and freshly ground black pepper. Allow the sauce to cool down completely. In winter, I just cover the pan and put it outside for the night, but you can also put the pan in water with ice cubes. If the sauce has been chilled completely, mix it with the ground meat. Then, vacuum seal it in portions. Since the sauce is so dry and has cooled off, you should have no problems vacuum sealing the meat with the sauce in an external vacuum sealer like a food saver. I own a chamber vacuum machine, which is even better. Because I made 16 times the recipe and vacuum sealed it in half portions, I had 32 bags to fill and seal. My largest container for sous vide is 24 liters or 6 gallons, so I could only cook 16 bags at the same time, and I had to do the sous vide cooking in 2 batches. I cooked them for about 24 hours at 74 degrees centigrade, that is 165 Fahrenheit. After that, I chilled them in ice water and froze them. To serve, you can reheat a bag of ragù for 15 minutes at the same temperature if the bag was chilled, or half an hour directly from frozen. Ragù alla Bolognese is served over tagliatelle in Bologna, never spaghetti. If you see spaghetti alla Bolognese on the menu, you know you're in a restaurant that doesn't serve authentic food. Spaghetti with Bolognese is like serving a hot dog on a bagel or serving smoked salmon with cream cheese on a hot dog bun. The tagliatelle should be made with eggs and can be fresh or dried. If you like this video, come and visit my blog at stefangourmet.com for hundreds of recipes and technical background articles about sous vide, as well as many authentic Italian recipes with or without sous vide. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you soon in the comment section of my blog.